Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
This defendant's decision to what would benefit her in the short term took the life of a brilliant father of 2 little boys and caused a lifetime of loss for his loved ones.
Today's episode starts in Tallahassee, Florida, on July 18th, 2014, just before 11 a.m. Dan Markel, a Florida State University law professor, is sitting in his car in his driveway. He has just returned home from first dropping his kids off at preschool and then going to a class at the gym. He's on the phone with someone, discussing a potential new school for one of his 2 young sons. We'll never know if he ever realized he had been followed that morning.
And when he pulled into his driveway that morning after his workout, the killers pulled in right behind him.
We'll never know if he saw the gunman, who we now know was Sigfredo Garcia, approach his driver's side window, or if he just happened to look up and there he was. Seconds later, he is shot in the head, twice, and Sigfredo Garcia runs back to a light-colored Toyota Prius he had rented a couple days prior, hops in the car, and heads back to his hometown of Miami, his friend Luis Rivera by his side. Dan Markel dies 14 hours later while in a hospital bed. What I just told you is what has been accepted as fact in a courtroom. In fact, I first covered this case on Court Junkie in episode 93, which was divided up into 2 parts. Listening to those episodes are not required to understand today's, but there will be additional details there that I'm not going to repeat in this one. In episode 93, Sigfredo Garcia went to trial and was convicted of the murder. His friend and co-defendant, Luis Rivera, had turned on him, pleading guilty and cooperating with the state of Florida. At that trial, Sigfredo wasn't the only defendant seated at the defense table. His on-again, off-again girlfriend, sometimes they referred to each other as husband and wife, and children's mother, Katherine Magbanua, was there too. According to prosecutors, she was the link between the killers and the masterminds. She had set everything up and made the arrangements for Dan Markel to be killed. Katherine had been dating Charlie Adelson at the time, the brother of Dan Markel's ex-wife, Wendy. Prosecutors believe Charlie asked Katherine, or perhaps she offered, to have Sigfredo, who was her ex at the time, do the hit on Charlie's former brother-in-law. Now, don't worry about trying to remember names and their connections to each other right now. I'll get into that in more detail later. The jury found Sigfredo guilty, but as for Katherine, they couldn't decide. They were a hung jury when it came to being convinced of her involvement. And so another trial was ordered. And that's where we're picking up the story today, with Katherine Magbanua's retrial for the murder of Dan Markel. But just before Katherine's retrial would begin, there was, of course, a huge development in the case. Because as anyone who has followed this particular case knows, there's always another bombshell waiting just around the corner. This is Jillian, and in partnership with Law and Crime, you are listening to Court Junkie, episode 204. The killers had been caught. One pleaded guilty, one was convicted by a jury of his peers, and one, who was maintaining her innocence, was about to go to trial again. The alleged masterminds, however, the ones who prosecutors believed actually planned the killing, the ones with the motive to want Dan Markel dead, had not been caught, despite prosecutors spelling out in legal documents who exactly they believed was involved. On January 21st, 2022, the state of Florida filed a pre-trial motion, and in it, there was a section labeled, "The Adelsons have not been charged." It reads, "The state believes that the defendant, in this case Katherine Magbanua, may attempt to introduce evidence, make reference to, argue, or otherwise infer the jury should consider the fact that no member of the Adelson family has been charged with the murder of Dan Markel. The evidence will show that the Adelsons, specifically Charlie Adelson, Wendy Adelson, and Donna Adelson, are co-conspirators to the murder and the ones who had the motive and initiated the plot to kill Mr. Markel." The filing was the first time the state had publicly named Wendy Adelson, Dan's ex-wife, as a co-conspirator. It then went on to say that none of the Adelsons had yet been charged. But just 3 months later, in April 2022, that changed.
A Fort Lauderdale dentist is charged in connection with the 2014 murder of his brother-in-law, who was a professor at Florida State University.
Charlie Adelson was arrested and charged with Dan's murder. Among the evidence cited for the arrest was an undercover recording of a meeting between Charlie and Katherine at a restaurant called Dolce Vita. This was a recording that had already been introduced as evidence in Katherine's last trial, but now prosecutor Georgia Kappelman told reporters that they were able to enhance it.
So the new evidence in the case is not really new evidence, it's old evidence, but a new clarification, which was done by a new audio expert. The enhancement was able to allow us for the first time to hear many statements that are uttered in that restaurant conversation by Charlie Adelson for the first time.
Charlie's attorneys attempted to bond him out, but because his charge is first-degree murder, in Florida, he was automatically denied bond, something his attorneys said they will fight. In the meantime, Katherine Magbanua would soon learn her fate. Would a new jury believe she was the link between the killers and the masterminds?
The reason we're here this morning is because the defendant in this case, Katherine Magbanua, set up the murder of a man named Dan Markel. And the evidence in this case will prove to you that the defendant was the link or the middleman between the people who wanted this murder done and the person who pulled the trigger.
Prosecutor Sarah Dugan gave the opening statements for the state on May 18, 2022. She told the jury that back in July 2014, Katherine Magbanua had a rich boyfriend, Charlie Adelson, and Charlie's family had a big problem. That problem was Dan Markel. The solution to the problem, she said, was Katherine.
This defendant was the solution because she had connections to the type of people who were willing and capable of pointing a gun at a stranger, someone they'd never met, and pulling the trigger.
She described how Dan was shot dead while parked in his driveway, and how a neighbor looked out his window and saw a light-colored Prius backing out and then speeding off. She said law enforcement immediately began investigating the killing. They came across clues that sent them down two different paths that led them to Katherine. The first was Dan's personal life. He was entangled in a very nasty divorce with his ex-wife, Wendy.
A review of the court case file revealed that Wendy Adelson was desperate to move back to Miami with her children in order to be closer to her parents. Her parents are named Harvey and Donna Adelson, and also her brother, who lives down there too. His name is Charlie Adelson. And you may remember that name from earlier. Charlie Adelson was the rich boyfriend of the defendant.
Dan was adamantly opposed to his children being relocated to Miami, and the judge ruled in his favor. Wendy was not permitted to move with the children. Unless, of course, something happened to Dan Markel, Dugan said. When going through Wendy's emails, they discovered many from Donna Adelson, Wendy's mom, who clearly hated Dan and was desperate to find a way for Wendy and her grandchildren to be able to relocate to Miami, even if that meant having to threaten, bully, or bribe Dan, she said.
The divorce between Dan Markel and Wendy Adelson was final about a year before the murder, but litigation continued throughout that year, right up until his death, with both sides alleging violations of the custody agreement, violations of the settlement agreement. And actually, shortly before the murder, Dan Markel alleged that Donna Adelson was disparaging him to his children. And he actually asked the court to enter an order preventing Donna Adelson from having unsupervised contact with his children, her grandchildren. But the murder of Dan Markel ensured that a ruling on this motion would never be a problem. And just days after the murder, Wendy Adelson and the little boys relocated to Miami within walking distance of the Adelson family's Miami home.
Prosecutor Dugan told the jury that the Adelsons were a very close family and that Harvey, Donna, and Charlie all worked together. Harvey and Charlie owned a dental practice in South Florida called the Adelson Institute. When interviewed by police after the murder, Wendy made the comment that her brother Charlie had recently bought her a TV as a divorce present and joked that it was cheaper than hiring a hitman.
So this path of looking into a motive in Dan Markel's personal life of who would want to kill him leads law enforcement to Charlie Adelson, a man who looked into hiring a hitman to kill him. And then Dan Markel was killed by a hitman. And who was Charlie Adelson's girlfriend at the time of this murder? It was this defendant, Katherine Magbanua.
The second path investigators went down started with the light-colored Prius, which, after a painstaking review of surveillance images, cell phone records, and toll records, came back to a rental car that was rented out by Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia. Their contact info was right there on the rental agreement. And when investigators looked into phone records from people who were in the area where Dan was killed, they came across a phone number with a Miami area code, a phone belonging to Sigfredo Garcia. And in Sigfredo's phone records, they found daily contact with another number that was in the area. That number belonged to his friend, Luis Rivera.
Luis Rivera is a Miami Latin King gang member, and he is a lifelong friend of Sigfredo Garcia.
But police still needed that connection. Why did these two men from Miami drive all the way up to Tallahassee to commit this murder? Katherine's number was a frequent contact of Sigfredo's and also Charlie's.
So the defendant's boyfriend was looking to hire a hitman, and her children's father was the hitman who killed Dan Markel.
Katherine's attorney, Tara Kawas, told the court in her opening statements that she actually agrees with the state on two very important points.
Number one, Charles Adelson had Dan Markel killed. We absolutely agree with that. Number two, Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia carried out the hit for Charlie Adelson. We agree with that too. What we do not agree on is whether or not Katherine Magbanua knew about a plan to have Dan Markel killed. That's the only thing we don't agree on.
She told the jury that she and Chris DeCoste, Katherine's other attorney, were going to do something different with this case, even though they have no burden to prove anything. She said they will prove beyond any doubt that Charlie Adelson conspired directly with Sigfredo Garcia behind Katherine's back to kill Dan Markel. She said Katherine and Sigfredo dated for 10 years and had 2 children together, but Katherine broke up with him after he couldn't stay away from temptation, cocaine, alcohol, and girls. 4 months later, she started dating Charlie, although their relationship was nothing serious. She said around the time of the murder, Sigfredo was actually stalking Katherine. He knew she was dating Charlie, a dentist, and he wasn't happy about that. He would wait outside her house and watch as she got into cars and went on dates. And Charlie knew all about Sigfredo, whose nickname was Tuto. She said Katherine would vent to Charlie about him, and so as a result, Charlie knew about all the unsavory people in Sigfredo's life. Kawas then laid out the defense's theory on how the coordination between Charlie and Sigfredo began.
February 14th, 2014, Valentine's Day, Dan Markel files a motion for protective order against Donna Adelson, requesting that she not be allowed to have unsupervised contact with his sons. This, of course, devastates Donna and Wendy. The court set the hearing for May 15th. A month later, it just so happens, Sigfredo Garcia follows Katie when she leaves her apartment to meet Charles for dinner. He was watching them as they sat outside a restaurant having dinner, and she had no idea that Sigfredo was watching. Katie then left to go home because she has kids to take care of. And Charles leaves South Beach to now drive up to his Fort Lauderdale home in his, not black Lexus, burgundy Lexus. This is when Sigfredo Garcia confronted Charles about Katie. And for Charles, an opportunity had now fallen directly into his lap. You want her back, Katie? No problem. I'll give you $100,000 in cash, and I'll leave her alone if you do this for me. God only knows what Charles Adelson told Sigfredo Garcia about Dan Markel. He probably even said to him, or you could get someone to do this for me. The deal was hatched in that moment.
She said the very next morning, Charlie reached out to Katherine. She said it was to check and see if Sigfredo told her about them having met the night before.
Then in April, less than a month before the court date, remember the court date is May 15th, and right around the time of Wendy Adelson's birthday, Sigfredo slips up and he leaves his phone unattended while he is visiting Katie and the kids. Katie goes through his phone and actually sees Charlie's cell phone number in one of Sigfredo Garcia's phone. You're going to hear that Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera both had multiple phones. The phones that they have the call detail records for, and burner phones, which are phones that you cannot track. What does Katie do when she sees Charles Adelson's phone number inside her ex-boyfriend's phone?
She said there's a text from Katherine to Charlie asking, "Did Tuto call your phone?" She then asks if his cell phone number is online. Kawas said Charlie then lies to her and makes a joke that, yeah, Sigfredo asked him to go deep-sea fishing with him.
In May, less than a week before the hearing on the motion, Wendy Adelson substitutes her counsel on the hearing. What does that cause? A delay. So now that hearing date, which was right there, has now been moved to August 7th. Charles has only a few months now to make sure that the job is done.
She said Luis will testify that he and Sigfredo went to Tallahassee in June as a scouting trip, but that in fact, only Luis went. Something spooked him then, and he didn't do the hit. Then, on July 1st, about 2 weeks before the murder, Sigfredo stalks Katherine again and sees her go out on a date with Charlie. Kawas then describes an encounter that Katherine had testified about at the first trial, where she said Sigfredo confronted the two of them in the street. Afterwards, Sigfredo then made a phone call to Harvey Adelson's cell phone and left a voicemail. There will be another explanation for this call later, as put on by another witness. But Kawas says this proves that Sigfredo had access to the Adelsons himself, without Katherine.
And Sigfredo, when he sees that Charlie is still with Katie, he is pissed. So what does he do as they're trying to drive off in the burgundy Lexus to go on their date? Sigfredo Garcia cuts them off, jumps out of the vehicle, and runs up and tries to confront Charles. Charles doesn't even roll down the window. He just backs up and tries to get out of there. He's terrified of Sigfredo. And what does Sigfredo Garcia do? Sigfredo Garcia directly calls the Adelsons. There is no question in that. They like to say that Ms. Magbanua is the only link. She is not. Sigfredo Garcia, there is a phone call that he called directly, no conduit, no in between, the Adelsons. And why that phone call is so important? Because that is the phone call that cracked the case for Tallahassee Police Department. When they did the tower dump, when Dan Markel was murdered, that's the number that came up. So what they did is they go and look at the Adelsons' phone numbers and go, wait a second, why is this phone number around the time of the murder on the Adelsons' phone records? This has nothing to do with Katie, Sigfredo, and the Adelsons. 2 weeks later, after that incident, 2 weeks, Dan Markel is murdered in his driveway by Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia, less than a month before the scheduled court date.
Prosecutors say that after the murder, at night, Katherine met up with Charlie and got money from him to give to Sigfredo and Luis. Then, the following morning after the murder, she met up with them at Luis's house and dropped it off. But Kawas said there's nothing to prove this, and that it was Charlie who paid Sigfredo and Luis.
Nothing directly proves that. When they say the evidence is going to show that Ms. Magbanua drove up the night before, what she fails to tell you is it shows that she's driving up north and then her phone dies. And you know who else lives up north? Near Charles Adelson? Her entire family. They want you to speculate that that is where she went. Then they want you to speculate the next day. The only person that is going to say that she delivered money, the only person they're going to bring, Luis Rivera. That's the only evidence.
She said after getting the money, Luis gave some to his mom, sister, and girlfriend, and that none of them have been arrested. But Sigfredo, who finally had some money he could give to Katherine, gave her cash, and Katherine went to the bank and deposited it. She's the only one who does that, she pointed out. She said every time the state says there's a spike in her bank accounts, that there is a legitimate explanation for every one of them. And the most insulting thing, she said, is the accusation that Katherine used money she got from the murder to get a breast augmentation. She said that was something Katherine had been saving up for since high school. She also slammed the state's clarification of the Dolce Vita tape, where Katherine and Charlie were recorded by an undercover agent sitting nearby.
You'll hear one thing that's important. You never hear the word murder. You never hear the word Tallahassee. You never hear the word Wendy Adelson. You never hear Dan Markel. None of those words you hear because he's not talking to her about it.
She told the jury that Charlie broke up with Katherine about a month after the murder. He ghosted her, and she wasn't happy about it. That opened the door for Sigfredo to return to her life.
And it's so sad, members of the jury, because in this case, what we have here is Charlie Adelson getting what he wanted, Sigfredo Garcia getting what he wanted, and more importantly, Wendy Adelson got what she wanted. Less than 4 days after he was murdered, she packed her furniture and left Tallahassee.
She said the evidence will show that law enforcement made a grave mistake in arresting Katherine. Much of the evidence in Katherine Magbanua's retrial was the same evidence introduced at her original trial, including how Dan Markel was found, testimony from the neighbor who found him, and more basics about the case I already went over earlier. But some things were a little different this time around. As Tara Kawas, one of Katherine's attorneys, said in her opening statement, their side agrees that Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera were the hitmen, and that Charlie Adelson was the one who hired them. So instead, this trial was more focused on Katherine's involvement. And the involvement, perhaps, of those who have yet to be arrested. More on that in a bit. Katherine was arrested on October 1st, 2016, as she was driving in the parking lot of a shopping mall. Investigator Craig Isom, the lead investigator in the case, said that after she was taken into custody, she was allowed to make a phone call. And after that phone call, something piqued investigator Isom's interest.
During the arrest of Ms. Magbanua, is she permitted to make a phone call?
Yes.
And at the conclusion of that phone call, do you receive a phone call?
Yes.
How much time passed between her phone call and the one that you received?
Less than 20 minutes.
Right. And who was calling you?
An attorney named David Marcus.
And who did David Marcus represent?
He indicated he represented Charlie Adelson.
As he had testified to in her last trial, he said they were unable to find any evidence that Katherine ever worked at the Adelson Institute, even though she began receiving checks from them, signed by Donna, after the murder. He said he saw no evidence that she ever cleaned there or contacted patients. Prosecutors believe this was part of the payout for the murder. On cross, investigator Isom was asked more about how his team came to believe that Katherine was the connection between Sigfredo and Charlie. He agreed that without Luis Rivera's testimony, they didn't have enough for the state attorney to sign the warrant for her arrest, and that Luis was the one who said Sigfredo told him Katherine had hired them, and that he overheard Sigfredo talking on the phone with her immediately after the homicide. Katherine's attorney, Chris DeCoste, pointed out that Luis could have seen the cell phone evidence in the police reports he got in discovery prior to making his deal with the state.
And you would agree with me that he didn't have to make up that there was a phone call because it was right there in your report that said there's a phone call at 12:30 after the murder, right?
If he had access to it, or if it was read to him or given to him, yeah, he could do that.
He would just have to pepper in what the conversation was about.
Sure.
You have no reason to believe that he didn't get your report and discovery, right?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
In your many years as an investigator.
Once again, I have no idea. That's my answer.
Okay, but let me ask the question. In your many years as an investigator, you learn that these reports become part of the process and go to the defense. You know that, right?
Yes.
And you have no reason to believe that that didn't happen here.
I have no reason to believe otherwise in this case.
Investigator Isom also agreed that his report discussed the phone record locations of Sigfredo, Luis, and Katherine from the morning after the murder, when Luis said the alleged money drop occurred, and all the phone records in the case for that matter.
So what we're talking about is that Luis Rivera can take it and go, all right, so there's a phone call at 12:30. I know there's a phone call, and I know that because they're telling me, oh, yeah, that was the phone call where I heard there was a murder. He could do that, right?
Yes.
And again, you agree this is a dangerous guy.
I've already answered that, yes.
Yes. And although you said that you didn't give him the script intentionally, didn't you unintentionally give him the script of what to say?
If you want to look at it from that hindsight, yes.
As for Katherine's possible employment at the Adelson Institute, DeCoste read aloud some messages that Katherine had sent to Charlie in August and September 2014.
On August 12, 2014 through August 13, 2014, where Miss Magbanua sends a text message to Mr. Adelson saying, can you call me when you get a chance? Have something to ask you about your site. I'm not saying today, any time of the week, because he's asking me and telling me to call your office to get some info and to set up a meeting, but I'm going to tell him to just meet you up anywhere you're at. Response, I will call him first break today, repeated, to set something up. Can I text me his contact info? And that was read correctly. There was just a mistake.
And that was from Magbanua to Charlie Adelson?
Correct.
I don't recall that specifically, no.
Do you remember the text message where Katherine Magbanua texts Charles Adelson on September 14, 2014, 4 days before that? Text him, I'll let you know my availability so you can know more or less how many hours I can dedicate. Thank you again. Is that or is that not evidence that she's about to start working for him and receiving paychecks?
That sounds like it is.
In another text, Katherine thanks Charlie and says she will call them and make sure they put her on the schedule.
Charles Adelson to Katherine Magbanua, no problem. You're helping me out more than I'm helping you. I'm excited to start. Excuse me, that's Katherine Magbanua. No problem. You're helping me out more than I'm helping you. I'm excited to start. Yay. Next message. Cool. It should work good. I did say you would call. I did not give your full name, but just call. It's cool. Response, KK. Now, these messages are on September 17th, 2014, the day before she starts receiving patients. It's evidence that she's working there, right?
Sounds like it.
So the answer that was given to the state of no evidence that she's working there, that was incorrect, right?
No, that was my answer to the state.
All of this lines up with the fact of what you found out in your investigation, that what she was doing was communicating with patients and she was doing it remotely.
Could have been easily explained at answering the subpoena, but it never was.
Investigator, do me a favor. Look at this jury. Can you tell them conclusively that she did not work for Charles Adelson, legitimately receiving that money?
I can tell you that I could find no evidence of what duties, how she was employed, what schedule, or any way that would adjust for this compensation. Nothing.
And as the
I could not find anything. And it was subpoenaed to the office. You would think that an office could supply an application, a W-4, a schedule, duties. Nothing was provided. Only that these paychecks were paid to her on those days.
Investigator, my question was, can you conclusively say to them, no, she didn't work there?
No.
Because there's evidence that indicates that she did, right?
You've read it out. I've stated my answer.
As for the hundreds of phone calls that were wiretapped in this case, Investigator Isom agreed that there were none in which Katherine spoke directly about being involved in the murder. Wendy Adelson took the stand on day 2, and things had definitely changed since the last time she testified during Katherine's first trial. For one thing, her brother Charlie was now sitting in jail, awaiting trial for the murder of her ex-husband. And as I said earlier, she had officially been named in court documents filed by the state as an unindicted co-conspirator. Would her testimony, or at least the tone of her testimony, be any different this time around? Anyone in the state of Florida who is subpoenaed to testify is given what's called use and derivative use immunity. This was one of the first things Wendy Adelson was asked to explain to the jury by prosecutor Georgia Kappelman.
So I have derivative and use immunity. And so in the future, a prosecutor couldn't use what I say here today against me.
Correct. But you could be prosecuted. Just nothing you said here today could be used against you in that prosecution. Do you agree with that?
I suppose so.
Okay.
Wendy testified about her and Dan's marriage and subsequent divorce. They married in 2006, had 2 children, and moved to Tallahassee for Dan's work. In 2012, they separated. Wendy said that was her decision, partly due to differences in the ways in which they practiced their Jewish faith. Wendy said she didn't keep kosher, and Dan did. Wendy testified that she lived about 15 to 20 minutes away from Dan. She was asked if she would agree that it was a contentious divorce.
I think it was made much more difficult by Danny, who didn't want to get divorced, but sure, we can call it contentious.
Not what we would classify as an amicable divorce. You hear about those.
No, it would be not an amicable divorce.
She agreed that she wanted to move to South Florida with their children, that she was seeking a place that would be stable and permanent for the kids and for herself. Her family was there, and so were more job opportunities for her. She said Dan never planned on staying in Tallahassee, that it was just a question of time before he moved to New York to be with his girlfriend or went to Harvard.
Was the relocation to South Florida the most important part of your divorce?
No.
Was it your most non-negotiable term?
No.
Okay. But it was very important to you?
I wouldn't say it was very important to me.
Was it very important to your mother?
She was much more looking forward to having her daughter and her grandchildren home. Yeah.
Wendy was asked about her allegation in the divorce proceedings that Dan was creating a hostile work environment for her at the Florida State University College of Law, where she also worked. She said he did, and that he was disparaging her to her colleagues. She was asked about the Adelson Institute and whether their practice was lucrative. She said at one point it was, but not anymore. She said between 2013 and 2016, the business was doing better than it did after that point, when the social media barrage happened, referring to this case. Prosecutor Kappelman asked if the practice was earning a profit of $2 million a year, and she said she doesn't know. She was asked if around the time of her divorce, her mom, Donna, didn't like Dan.
I think that's fair to say. I think she was very disappointed by the way he treated me.
In fact, she despised him, didn't she?
I can't speak to how my mom felt or whether she despised him. I think she was very disappointed.
She sent you some emails to indicate her feelings about Dan Markel around that time, didn't she?
She did.
I'm going to show you what I've marked as State's Exhibit 63. Did your mom ever refer to your husband as an asshole?
Yes.
A bully?
Yes.
A zealot?
A religious zealot? Yes.
A jackass?
Yes.
A religious extremist?
Yes.
What about Jibbers? She calls him Jibbers?
Yeah, Jibbers is not a bad name. It was a silly name that I came up with during a period of time when I felt incredibly terrorized by Danny. And so it was a word that I would use to kind of make him seem less scary.
Is it fair to say that it was a derogatory term?
No.
Okay, but you came up with it directly in relation to him terrorizing you.
I did. It was a way to take the steam out of a situation I found scary. I wouldn't say it was derogatory. I just think it was.
And when you say scary, are you alleging physical abuse?
I'm not alleging physical abuse.
As stated earlier, Dan filed one last motion just months before his death. Wendy was asked about it.
All right, so in that filing, Dan Markel alleges that your mother is disparaging him to the children, correct?
That is correct.
And he was seeking a court order saying she couldn't have contact with the kids unless there was another adult present, correct?
I see that here. I don't think I took it seriously at the time, so it didn't really lodge in my memory.
Did your mom take it seriously?
No.
Was it ever ruled on?
I don't know. If it were, it should be here, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it here?
No, it's not. It was scheduled to be ruled on in August of 2014, right?
I don't know. I don't know when it was scheduled for. I do know that nobody took it very seriously.
Okay, so your mom wasn't worried about that motion being granted. Okay.
Wendy then testified about her brother Charlie. She had met Katherine a couple times, she said, but didn't get the impression that they were a serious couple.
What about her ex, Sigfredo Garcia? Were you aware of him at all before this case?
No.
So you didn't even know she had an ex?
I knew she had an ex because my brother once mentioned that he was dating a girl and she had an ex that seemed a little scary. And I said, maybe you should stay away from that.
Yeah. And so the ex, did you have specific knowledge about why he was a little scary?
No.
And did Katherine Magbanua ever tell you anything that was specifically scary about him?
No.
Were you aware of your brother having any communications with the scary ex-husband?
No, only that my brother seemed a little scared of him, but I don't know that they talked or didn't talk.
So it would be surprising to you to learn that they had a relationship.
Very.
As for Charlie mentioning he was going to hire a hitman to kill Dan, Wendy said he didn't say that.
He told one bad off-color joke where he said he had bought me a TV when I got divorced and said it was a present and made a very bad joke and bad taste, that it was cheaper than hiring a hitman.
And was I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's okay.
What else were you going to say?
I think that was it.
All right. Was that a joke that your brother made one time or more than one time?
He has a tendency to repeat himself. So everything he says multiple times.
Do you know how many times he said it?
I have no idea, but definitely twice at least.
And it was your understanding that he had not made any actual efforts to hire the hitman?
Yes.
But you did get a TV as a divorce present?
I did get a TV.
She was asked if there was a time after the murder where she went out with her brother Charlie and vomited at the table. This was something her prior boyfriend, Jeffrey Lacasse, had testified about at the last trial.
That happened. It's just yes or no.
What would you like to know the context? It did happen.
Okay. And who was present at that dinner?
Just my brother and me.
Okay. And that was kind of your first time out after this murder had occurred, right?
After it happened, I couldn't eat for several weeks, and then I was completely terrified to leave my house. So this was the first time I tried to leave the house and eat food, and that is how it ended up. I threw up.
At the dinner table, in a restaurant?
Yes, it was very embarrassing.
How long after the murder was that incident?
Probably about a month or so.
Was the dinner intended to be a celebration of the fact that your husband was murdered?
Absolutely not.
Did your brother refer to it as a celebration?
I highly doubt that.
Could that have been one of his jokes that was in bad taste?
He may have been celebrating the fact that I was willing to leave the house.
All right. Were you involved in the plot to kill your husband?
Absolutely not.
Did you have knowledge of the plot to kill your husband?
No.
But you suspected that your family was involved?
No, I did not suspect that my family was involved.
Did you mention in your interview with law enforcement that you suspected that your family could be behind this?
I think I speculated about lots of things during the 6 hours I spent with law enforcement without an attorney present trying to help them solve this murder. Yes, I said all kinds of things.
All right. And one of the things you said was that your family very much disliked him and that you thought it was possible that someone had done this on your behalf, unbeknownst to you.
I did say I thought someone might have done this on my behalf, yes.
And who did your brother know that had connections that could get something like that done?
I have no idea.
She testified that after Katherine, she knew of at least 3 other girlfriends Charlie had. She said she knew Katherine worked at her dad's dental office, but wasn't sure what she did there. She said she knew she worked there because Charlie told her. She was unsure of the time frame. In the last trial, Wendy detailed her actions on the day of the murder. I want to touch on it again this time around because Wendy's actions and potential involvement in the plot really comes up a lot during this trial. On the day of Dan's murder, Wendy said she was working on a couple pieces of writing while waiting on the Geek Squad to come over and fix her TV. She said they came pretty early, around 9 a.m. Afterwards, she said she did some more work from home, talked to a couple friends, and made last-minute plans to have lunch with 2 of them. Before she met up with them, she ran a few errands. She put gas in her car and went to ABC Liquors, a liquor store.
On the way to run your errands, did you go by the crime scene?
No.
On the way to run your errands, did you encounter a roadblock on Truscott?
I did.
All right, so you did turn off of Centerville onto Truscott.
I did.
All right, and when you encountered a roadblock, what did you assume the problem was there?
I figured it was just an electrical storm or something. There was some tape, and it looked like the road was blocked off. And so I just turned around and went back and went up Benton.
And had there been an electrical storm that morning?
I didn't remember an electrical storm, but in the summertime, there's always trees falling and rainstorms, so pretty normal.
Right, and you weren't concerned based on that experience that there could be something going on at your marital home?
Absolutely not.
And your ex-husband, Dan Markel, had your children at that time, right?
No, he did not.
Okay, so you had your children at that time?
No, my children were at preschool at that time.
Right, but who took them to preschool that day?
Danny would have taken them to preschool.
Okay. So it was his day. He was killed on his parenting day.
It was the day he would have brought them to preschool, and I would have picked them up.
All right. Did they spend the night with him the night before?
They did.
Okay. And you hadn't seen your children yet that day when you encountered the roadblock?
On Friday, no.
Okay.
Wendy told the jury she went to ABC Liquors to pick up an item she needed for a friend's Stock the Bar party she was supposed to go to later that night.
And what was that item?
I'm sorry?
What was the item?
It was bourbon.
What type of bourbon?
Bullet bourbon. The invitation had asked specifically to bring a bottle of Bullet bourbon, so I went to the store and asked them where I could find that.
And the bottle of Bullet bourbon was in your vehicle when law enforcement came to interview you about this case?
Right. When I told law enforcement they could search my vehicle and signed away all my rights, yeah.
She said she believed Dan was planning on going to New York to visit his girlfriend the day after he was killed.
Do you know how the killers knew that Dan Markel was planning to leave town the next day?
I have no idea.
You didn't relay that information to anyone?
Absolutely not.
Did you have WhatsApp on your phone at the time?
I really don't know. I have it now. I don't know if I had it 8 years ago.
Did you communicate with anyone on WhatsApp or similar technology to relay any information about the murder of your husband?
Absolutely not.
She was then asked about when she changed her kids' last names.
Did you change their legal names about a month or so after the murder?
No, not a month or so after the murder, no.
Okay. When was it done? Even sooner than that?
No, absolutely not. When I tried to put my children in school and their faces had been unblurred on CNN and all across social media.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you'll answer my question is, when were the boys' names changed?
The boys' names were changed after I wrote a letter to Danny's family explaining why I was changing their names.
When were their names
About
changed?
a year after.
Okay, and that was when they were legally changed, July 6, 2015?
I don't remember the date, but if you have it, that sounds correct.
Okay, so they were legally changed on that date, but just a month or so after the murder, when you were enrolling them in school, is when they effectively had their names changed.
That is not true.
And what did you change their names from and to?
I changed their last name from their father's last name to mine.
From Markel to Adelson's?
That is correct.
And did you also drop the middle name of one of your boys that was a tribute to his paternal side?
It was a tribute to both families.
Did you drop it?
I did. I lost an honor to both families that day, yes.
Do you want the culpable parties in this murder held accountable?
Absolutely.
And even if it involves your own family?
Absolutely.
Do you recall giving an interview with law enforcement on the day that your ex-husband was murdered?
I recall sitting with law enforcement for 6 hours. Yes, I recall.
And did you tell law enforcement something different in that interview about the culpability of your family?
I'm sure while I sat for 6 hours completely traumatized that I said all kinds of things.
All right. And was one of the things you said while you sat for 6 hours completely traumatized that you wanted the culpable parties held accountable unless it was your family?
I don't believe I phrased it like that, and I think you're taking my words out of context, but sure.
But sure?
But sure what?
No further questions.
Katherine's attorney, Chris DeCoste, cross-examined Wendy.
This is all about you, isn't it?
Excuse me?
This is all about you, right?
I was called to be a witness and I'm testifying, so I don't understand the question. Is it a question?
There's about 100 people in this courtroom, right?
There are people in the courtroom.
Possibly thousands watching, right?
I have no idea who's watching.
And it's all because of your failed marriage, right?
I disagree with that.
You disagree that your ex-husband is dead because of your family?
Yes, I disagree.
These jurors are here for weeks doing their civic duty because of your marriage, right?
No.
Katie's going through this ordeal because of that marriage, right?
No.
Dan Markel's parents are going through absolute misery because of your failed marriage. Isn't that right?
No, that's incorrect.
Well, let's talk about the marriage.
DeCoste brought up how their divorce came to be and how he said Wendy waited until Dan was out of town at a work conference before moving her things out, taking the kids, and leaving divorce papers on the bed. She agreed that she also went to the bank and withdrew half of what was in there.
You were unhappy in the marriage, right?
That's why I got divorced, yes.
And it happens. Marriages fall apart, right?
Yes.
But you complained constantly about it, didn't you?
No, I don't think I complained constantly.
To anyone that would listen?
No, that's not true.
You agree with me that you complained to the one person that would actually do something about it?
I don't understand what you're asking.
Your big brother, Charles Adelson, you complained to him about how bad Professor Markel was and how much you hated him and didn't want to be in a marriage with him.
I definitely talked to my brother about how unhappy I was in my marriage. If that's the question, then yes. Is that the question?
Yes, that is a question. You talked to your brother, Charles Adelson, about how bad your marriage was.
I did, yes.
DeCoste asked her if she would agree that there's information about this case everywhere.
I'd been advised by my lawyer not to read it.
All right. Now, we're not talking about reading stuff. There's podcasts.
Also not to listen.
TV shows.
Also not to watch.
Articles.
Don't read.
And so you've made the decision. Now, you're a lawyer yourself too, right?
I am.
And you made the decision, I'm not going to look at any of this stuff.
Correct.
I don't want to know what happened to the father of my 2 children.
Not I don't want to know what happened.
How can you say you love those boys if you don't care who killed the father that they loved?
Of course I care who killed the father that they loved.
Then why won't you look at the stuff?
I've been advised not to.
Are you afraid that when you look at it, you're going to realize that your brother did this?
I am not afraid of that.
Now, of course, you've, and we won't get into privileged communications, but you've spoken to your lawyer about the case.
How are we not getting into privileged communications? Yes, I've spoken to my lawyer about the case.
You're very intelligent. You have one of the top defense attorneys in the country, former federal prosecutor, John Lohr, right there in the blue suit, right?
He is my attorney.
You're telling me with all of this at your disposal, your intelligence, his experience, and all this information, that you don't care to find out who it is that killed Professor Markel?
This is not that I don't care to find out. My job is to take care of those boys, and that is what I do. I don't see how it helps take care of them to go reading and watching and soaking up all of the horrible information that's out there.
You don't realize that you could be helpful in finally untangling this to give this jury the truth about what happened to Professor Markel?
I have been nothing but helpful since this started.
So what happened to their son? By you looking at it, you are at the center of all this, but you won't look at anything to help in the process.
I've done nothing but help in this process.
You came here and testified.
I came here and testified. I spoke to the police for 6 hours without anyone present. I signed over my cell phone, my car, my house, everything, my computer. What else do I have or know that you haven't seen?
She agreed that she was testifying because she was subpoenaed.
Correct.
Right?
This is not fun. I would not do this by choice.
You've been inconvenienced.
I've not been inconvenienced.
Professor Markel was shot in the head.
I'm not complaining about being here. This is my duty. I'm here.
He asked her if she expected the jury to believe that she hasn't confronted her brother Charlie about this.
Yes, I do.
Yes, you did confront him?
Yes, I do expect them to believe that I did not confront my brother because I didn't.
Or maybe you don't need to because you know the truth in this case. You already know it. That he went behind your back, right?
Did not happen.
Just like he has done with past boyfriends. He's done that in the past where he's gone behind your back when you were having problems in a relationship and dealt with it himself.
No.
Ms. Adelson, you understand that until you expose your brother what he did, that everybody's going to consider you as guilty. You understand that, right?
What is the question that you're asking me?
You understand that until you expose your brother and explain what he did, that he went behind everybody's back, that he hired a hitman to murder your ex-husband, you'll remain guilty in the eyes of the world.
I can't speak to the eyes of the world. I can only know that I have done nothing wrong.
Or maybe you are guilty.
I am not guilty.
One of the ways in which Luis Rivera implicated Wendy in his prior testimony was that he said he saw her the day before the murder by Dan's house. He said Sigfredo pointed her out to him and implied that she was there making sure they knew where to go. DeCoste asked her about this.
A witness in this case, and I'm not going to get into their testimony, but one of the hitmen, the convicted hitman, implicates you. On July 17, 2014, the day before the murder, the morning before, he says that you were walking on Trescott with the 2 boys, that you walked down the driveway and into the house.
That never happened.
Right, because Professor Markel, he had the kids. Based on the way that your guy's schedule was, on that day, he would have had the children in the morning, and you're going through such a bad divorce, you wouldn't be at his house, right?
I wouldn't be at his house anyway, but not because we were going through a bad divorce. At that time, things were pretty copacetic.
All right, so we're coming back to maybe you do know, or maybe you were involved.
Excuse me? What's the question that you're asking me?
I'm giving you a header of what we're talking about so that it will ease you in the question. Okay? I'm just telling you what the topic that we're on, so we'll get to a question.
DeCoste then brought up her former boyfriend, Jeffrey Lacasse, and how he had previously testified that she told him Charlie had been looking into hiring a hitman. DeCoste pointed out that this was months before Charlie had met Katherine.
I don't remember when they met.
Letting you know the topic we're on, we're talking about you being involved. That same week, earlier in the week, you sent an email. We're talking about the week of the murder now, not spring break, the week of the murder, not Yardbird, the week of the murder. You sent an email to Jeffrey Lacasse saying that you wanted to break up, that you needed space, right?
I did.
Sent him a long email. Stay away. We're broken up. Right?
I did.
You knew that on July 18, 2014, Jeffrey Lacasse was leaving town to go on a trip, right?
I knew he was leaving at some point that week. I don't remember when.
You knew that he was leaving on the same day of the murder at the same exact time as the murder.
I don't think I did.
11 a.m. on July 18, 2014.
I don't think I knew when he was leaving town.
It's a good way to put the blame onto somebody else. You'd agree on that, right? If it happened, it would have been a good way to put the blame on somebody else.
I have no idea when he was going to leave town.
Your interview, July 18, 2014, you said, my brother, he joked about hiring a hitman. Perhaps that was you just planting a seed to divert the attention of law enforcement away from you.
It was not.
He then brought up her immunity.
Your understanding, though, is it doesn't mean they can't arrest you. They just can't use what you say here against you later on. So you're protected.
Correct.
And you needed that to testify, right?
It's just given to testify. It's not a question of whether I needed it. It comes with testifying.
You fear being charged by them, so you need to have that protection of your words.
I don't fear being charged for a crime I didn't commit, no.
Now, y'all had this nice exchange where it was pleasant, but there's actually tension between you and this office, right?
No.
They recently had your brother, Charles Adelson, arrested, and he's in custody, right?
Correct.
For first-degree murder.
Correct.
And there's no tension?
It's very uncomfortable to be here. It's hard to tell where the tension is coming from.
They've discussed your involvement in this case. They insinuated it on the direct examination. There's no tension?
Lots of media insinuates that I did something I didn't do too. I can't feel tension towards every person in the world.
That's funny. I thought you didn't look at anything.
I don't. That's why.
But you know that you know about the media, but you don't know about the media?
I know about the media because it keeps me from employment. It keeps me from lots of things in my life. I'm aware of what's there, but I don't read the minutia so I can sleep at night.
Ms. Adelson, 5 minutes ago, you said you don't look at any of that stuff. Now I asked you a question. Let me finish.
Sure.
5 minutes ago, you say you don't look at any of that stuff. Now I ask you a question, you say you look at stuff.
That's not actually what I said. I said I'm aware that it exists, but I don't read it. I don't listen to it.
Then how do you know that they're bashing you?
You just told me they are.
I did?
Yeah.
How about this? We'll come back to it. You can think up a better answer, okay?
I'm not thinking up an answer. I'm telling you the truth. I'm sorry if you don't want to listen to it.
As for her parents, she said they would likely testify too if they received a subpoena. DeCoste made one last appeal to her.
End the madness and share the truth. Will you please share the truth with this jury?
I've been sharing the truth since I walked in here. I've done nothing but share the truth.
You know what happened here, despite your claims to the jury that you haven't looked at anything, you haven't discussed with anybody, and you haven't confronted your brother. You know what happened here, right?
I do not know what happened here, and if I did, I would have shared it with the police 8 years ago.
You found out after that your brother had done this and gone behind your back. That's why you were thrown up at that dinner, right?
No, it's not.
You know that it didn't involve Katie either, right?
I don't know anything about it.
If you're not going to say all of that and finally give the truth, why don't you just admit to this jury that you're guilty?
Because I'm not guilty.
On redirect, Prosecutor Kappelman brought up the fact that Dan's parents hadn't been able to see their grandkids after the murder and referenced an email Wendy had seen between Dan's parents and prosecutors. In the email, Dan's parents inquired about what to do with the kids if there were more arrests in the case. Wendy had gotten angry and ceased any visits or communication with them. Wendy had discussed this at the last trial, too.
But the specific nature of the email, you will agree, was in the event that there's some kind of mass arrest, because they don't know who's getting ready to go to jail next, right? I mean, they're not privy to the investigation any more than you are, right? Law enforcement investigations, they're secret.
Sure.
Okay. And their concern, would you agree the concern ultimately in the email was for the care of the children?
The concern was to make sure the children were under good care, but as their mother, I know they're always under good care with me.
Right, but
and there's no need for foster care.
The email contemplated you not being available to care for them.
That's not possible.
Because it's not possible for you to get arrested.
Correct, because I've done nothing wrong and I believe in our justice system.
Okay, well, just wanted to clarify the nature of that.
Jeffrey Lacasse, Wendy's former boyfriend, also took the stand again in this trial. They dated in the fall of 2013, pretty much up until right before the murder. As you'll notice, some of the things in his testimony directly contradict things Wendy had just testified to. He said Wendy was going through an extremely contentious divorce with Dan, and that she talked about it all the time.
Specifically, did you have knowledge through your relationship with Mrs. Adelson about a motion that had been filed by her ex-husband that was requesting that her mother not have contact with the children unless it was supervised?
Yes, I do recall that.
All right, and was that one of the items that she was really upset over?
Yes, there were many, but that was one for sure.
Okay, so fair to say she took that litigation or that filing very seriously?
Yeah, she took every filing and every point and every motion very seriously, was my impression.
He and Wendy took a trip to Miami in March 2014. They had dinner there with Charlie and Katherine talked about her ex, Sigfredo.
What statement, if any, did Ms. Magbanua make about her child's father?
Yeah, so I cannot recall every exact word. I remember references to fighting, the word police, and that he definitely had a criminal record, which didn't sound like speeding tickets. It sounded serious.
Okay. And you never had the opportunity to meet her child's father, did you?
No, I never met him.
Okay. Did Charlie participate at all in that conversation?
We were all there. We were all engaged.
But he didn't specifically say anything relevant like,
I don't recall
hey,
anything.
I know that guy.
No,
for example.
Did not say anything quite like that I recall. This is
okay.
A dinner, almost 9 years ago now.
Afterwards, Wendy drove them back to Charlie's house. Katherine had left to go home. He said he observed Wendy unusually jittery and being strange. The three of them went into the hot tub and the topic of Wendy's divorce came up. He said he remembered Charlie getting a little heated.
So y'all were in the hot tub?
We were in the hot tub.
And Charlie was expressing some negative words against Dan Markel?
Yes, strong negative words. And I also had a constant stream of comments from Wendy about what Charlie thought, that Charlie hated Danny's, guts.
On June 4th, 2014, he said he and Wendy met for coffee. While there, he said Wendy told him she wanted to cancel an upcoming trip they had planned. They had been scheduled to return to Tallahassee on July 17th, but Wendy was concerned that she wouldn't be home in time to pick up her kids from Dan on July 18th. As a reminder, Dan was killed on July 18th.
The plan originally was for you to return to Tallahassee on the 17th?
Yes.
And then for her to take custody of her kids from Dan Markel on the 18th?
Yes.
Okay. And she canceled the trip because why?
Because our flight might get delayed in the middle of summer and we would get stranded and not be able to be there to pick up the kids. And she had to pick up the kids on the 18th.
Later that night, he went over to her house. Now, I want to add here that June 4th is an important date in this case. This is when Lewis said he and Sigfredo went on their initial trip to Tallahassee.
And was there anything unusual about her behavior on the night of June 4th, 2014?
Definitely. She was a nervous wreck. And I actually traveled to the store to buy her, I believe, some Pepto-Bismol because she was such a nervous wreck. She was having stomach problems. So she wasn't food poisoned. She didn't have the flu. She wasn't sick. She was just so nervous that she was having stomach problems.
About a month later, on July 13th, he picked her up and they went to the movies and to dinner, and then back to her house.
Was there anything unusual about her behavior that evening?
Well, she made a very strange statement to me at the house.
Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, so we're walking into the house and we're having chit chat, and she says, "Can I tell something to you confidentially?" And I said, "Sure." And she tells me that last summer, when the relocation got denied, Charlie investigated multiple ways to fix this problem of Danny Markel, including hiring a hitman, and that it was going to cost about $15,000. And I'm unsure if that number is 15,000 or 50,000 because they sound similar, but she told me that the previous summer, that Charlie had looked into having Danny killed by a hitman.
All right, so that would have been the summer of 2013.
Yes.
Okay, and when she told you this statement, you previously characterized the TV statement as a joke. Mm-hmm. Was this statement also in the characterization of a joke?
No, these are two discrete, completely different things. She had a joke she would make about a TV being cheaper than a hitman. I knew that joke. This was a separate statement. This was chilling. This wasn't funny. This made my stomach flip. I found it disturbing at the time. It's completely different.
And the statement was made 5 days before the murder of Dan Markel.
That's correct.
By a hitman.
That's right.
They went to a yoga class together the following day, but it was awkward, and he got the vibe that it was over between them. Afterwards, he went to walk away, but she stopped him.
She called after me. I turned around, and she asked me, "Are you still going to Tennessee on Friday?" Because she had previously known that I was leaving for a trip to Tennessee at 11 a.m. on Friday, July 18th. And she had a series of questions about whether I was going. If I didn't go, why wouldn't I go? She, despite seemingly just breaking up with me and not wanting to see me for the next 3 days, had a deep interest in what I was going to be doing on Friday.
All right. And your plan at that time was to leave Tallahassee by plane or car?
By car at approximately 11 a.m. And Wendy Adelson and I had discussed that in some detail previously because of other plans that eventually got canceled. But she was the only person aware, other than the people in Tennessee, that that's when I was leaving.
And had you followed that plan, is it correct that you would have been departing Tallahassee and getting on I-10 at approximately the same time that the killers were?
Yes, not only that, but I would have driven within probably a couple miles of Dan Markel's house.
Right. And what type of vehicle would you have been in had you gone with that plan?
At that time, I was driving a 2004 four-door metallic gray Nissan Sentra.
Right. And are you familiar with the suspect vehicle in this case?
I am.
And would you characterize your vehicle as similar in appearance to that vehicle?
Yes, especially in profile, yes.
And are you aware that in her law enforcement interview, Wendy Adelson suggested you as a potential suspect?
I am aware of that.
He said he had a solid alibi. He had ended up leaving the night before instead of that morning. He had changed his plans and hadn't told anyone. He said he eventually spoke to Wendy on the phone about 10 days after the murder.
I had a couple of phone conversations with her. And in one of them, she described attending what Charlie Adelson described as a celebration dinner.
And was that the dinner where she vomited at the table?
Yeah, she said she hadn't eaten food in so long that as soon as the food hit her stomach, she started vomiting.
All right. And were these couple phone calls after the homicide the last contact that you had with Wendy Adelson?
Yes.
On cross, Jeffrey said the topic of Wendy's divorce got old, that she constantly talked about it. She also talked a lot about how much she hated living in Tallahassee. He said she blamed Dan for being stuck in Tallahassee, that she told him that if anything ever happened to him, she would move to South Florida. He also said Wendy told him Dan frequently emotionally abused her, but that in hindsight, nothing she ever said seemed like it amounted to that. He was asked more about when he and Wendy went to dinner with Charles and Katherine in Miami. He said he believes they sat outside while eating. He agreed they were clearly visible to any cars out on the street. Afterwards, he and Wendy drove to Charlie's house, and Charlie drove himself. Remember, according to the defense theory, after this dinner, Charlie was confronted by Sigfredo, which is when they started to coordinate their murder plan together. Kawas asked if Charlie's behavior in the hot tub was different than when he was at dinner.
And in this hot tub, when you guys are talking, did he come across as being trying to brag that he was a person that has friends on two sides of the tracks?
Yeah, that's a nice summary overall. I don't remember a lot of the specific details, but he was more street smart or more street, if you know what I mean by that, than I would have expected from a millionaire Miami dentist, yes.
Okay, and was he doing that more in the hot tub than how he was when he was at dinner with everybody?
I don't remember much of the dinner, so I can't really make a comparison.
Okay, but the hot tub incident kind of stands out.
The hot tub stuck out, yeah.
Okay, and did you describe him as being very cocky, arrogant, and narcissistic?
Yes.
When he was interviewed by detectives, he said he knew that they were trying to exclude him as a suspect.
And you'd agree with me that had it not been for your credit card receipts, the Walmart video, and other things, you probably could be sitting at the table between two lawyers, right?
I mean, if I had left town without a cell phone, not entered a store, not used a credit card, things could have been more complicated. But this was in 2014. It's a pretty unlikely scenario, it seems like to me. I worried that there was an effort made to, make it look as if, but there was also 10 other reasons that would have, that word exculpatory. There's 10 other reasons why I couldn't have done it that we didn't even have to go to because we had this videotape with me and it came.
You didn't even have to go there because they gave you the opportunity to give everything over and for you to, explain your side of the story, right?
Well, they filed search warrants. It wasn't,
They got a search warrant against?
Did
they tell you that before they spoke?
My understanding is they had search warrants for cell phones and financial records or some sort of court paperwork. I'm not a lawyer, but it wasn't as simple as I show them your cell phone and let you walk away. I showed them that to show, look, I didn't do it. And they did additional investigation after that.
And that's all for today's episode. I was initially hoping to make this episode in just one part, but there's still so much more to come in this trial, including testimony again from Luis Rivera and Katherine Magbanua herself. Not to mention more information about the FBI sting that authorities conducted, and the enhanced video of the meeting between Charlie Adelson and Katherine that prosecutors believe was enough of a smoking gun to finally place Charlie under arrest. More on all of that next week in part 2. If you're not already following Court Junkie on Instagram, please do so at Court Junkie. Follow me on Twitter at Court Junkie Pod, and you can always email me at podcast@courtjunkie.com. And if you want to hear additional Court Junkie bonus content, check out our Patreon options at courtjunkie.com/support. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.